is so apropos that we should talk about doing this stuff together, because as Reverend Dr. Michelle Madrano would tell you, no one can do this for you, but no one has to do it alone. All month long, we've been talking about the idea of visioning and the spiritual practice that we call visioning, in which we do an active type of listening, as if the most best friend we've ever had is about to whisper the secrets of the universe in our ear. And we can accept that vision for our life, and we can choose to become the type of person that could live that vision. And we do that by recognizing the magnificence of our own souls, and to let go of the old stories that we used to tell each other and ourselves about, oh, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too young, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too anything. So we get to do this work together. We get to come into our greatness together. And one of the great joys of my work is that I actually am expected to go do outreach. And so the last couple of years, I have gotten to know some of the people over at the Coalition for Compassion and Justice. And what they do is prevent and end homelessness in our area here, what we call the Quad City area in northern Arizona. I've made some great friends there, and they have some great stories. And having had the opportunity to hear from some of them and to learn who they are as people, I wanted you to get to meet them, because last week we hosted CCJ, or the Coalition for Compassion and Justice's shelter program, for a week while they are in the midst of a remodel. And we kept 57 people off the streets during that 1 week. And that was just, it was a joy. It was so wonderful to have different practitioners and other people show up to support, to show up with dessert, because we like to feed people, to see the place treated with such respect and love. And so, seeing as how I've had the joy of experiencing these people, I want you to meet my friend Chris Chamberlain. So he's going to tell a little of his story, and then I'm going to come back on and translate it into science of mind ease. And I know you're going to learn as much from him as I have. So, big tech change.
Hello, my name is Chris Chamberlain, and thank you, Kathleen, for that nice introduction there. She asked me a little while ago to talk on commitment to transformation. Well, I want to change that up a little bit and talk about the spiritual transformation, something that happened to me in my life and throughout my life, actually. And to my knowledge, I think there's like 7 steps of transformation, spiritual transformation. I'd like to go over a couple of those. I'll list them, but I only want to talk about maybe 3 since I have a limited amount of time. Number 1 is conformity, and number 2 is crisis. Number 3 is courage. Number 4 is curiosity. Number 5 is enthusiasm. Number 6 is wisdom. And number 7 is surrender. And I want to touch just a little bit on crisis, courage, and surrender. But before I get into that, I'd like to tell you of a true story that happened to me when I was about 8 years old. I was living in Tucson at the time, and me and my brother, my older brother Sonny, we were on our way to a convenience store, which was just down the street from us. But to get to this convenience store, there was a construction zone that was there in the process. Now, we had previously had a couple of days of really good monsoon rain, which is a lot of rain here in Arizona in a period of the summertime around July. And where there used to be a big trenched out ditch or whatever was filled with mud. And we were standing on top of this little dike, and we were throwing rocks and boulders in there and watching them sink in the mud. I went to throw a big boulder in, and I slipped, and I fell right in the middle of that and started sinking. At first, I was only up to my thighs, but the more I struggled, the deeper I started to sink. And in the meantime, my brother's got my arm. He's trying to pull me out, and he's on the side of the bank, about knee deep in mud. But I was sinking further and further and further until it was up to my shoulders. At that point, I gave up. When it was that high on me, I struggled for such a long time, and I just gave up. And I looked up in the sky, and I told God, "Here I am, taking it." You know, I thought I was going to die. And I looked at my brother and I said, "You know what? Just leave me. Just leave me. I'm done. I've had enough." And just looked at me and he goes, "No." And he grabbed a hold of my arm, and one quick jerking motion pulled me literally right out of that sinking mud that it was almost up to my neck at that time. Now, that is a true story that really happened to me when I was at that age. All right, now I want to touch a little bit on crisis now. Personal stuff that happened to me. When my children got older and left and stuff, I was kind of alone by myself because me and my wife had divorced and stuff. I was really close to my mother my whole life, and she'd been struggling fighting cancer for 10 years. And I got a call on the phone. I was living in a different state at the time, and it was from my brother who said that she's not doing well, and I went over there to see her. And within that week that I was there, she passed away. She died when I was holding her hand. It affected me greatly. I used to live in Payson, and I started drinking a lot because I didn't know how to face the loss, and I lost everything because of alcoholism, and lost my vehicle, lost my house, lost my self-dignity, lost my respect of my friends and family. Soon after that, I moved to the Prescott area to live with one of my sons, and the alcoholism still continued and continued. And one day I had a blackout drunk that I don't even remember. Don't even remember what happened, but evidently I'd assaulted my son and found myself at the front door of the CCJ shelter. I was just dropped off there. I also had a broken foot at the time, so I was on crutches. I had nowhere to go. I had no idea what to do with my life. I was at the end. I was giving up again. I was done. The shelter took me in, gave me a mat to sleep on. I was there for 30 days on this mat that was with a broken foot. And I remember the mat number was number 9. 30 days, same spot, never left. But they took me in. I started teaching AA classes in there. I quit drinking, and then it was like an epiphany that came over me. And once again, I just gave myself to God and said, "Here I am. Do what you will with me." And it seemed like he had grabbed a hold of my arm like my brother did and jerked me out of this quagmire of alcoholism and addiction. And it was gone. It left overnight. People all of a sudden looked at me different. I had a friend come up to me that I was helping with his alcoholism problems, and he looked at me one day and he goes, "What'd you do, Chris?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "You gave it all to him, didn't you?" And I go, "Yes, I did. I gave my life, all my problems over to God." And that was my transformation right there. From that point on in my life, I was had no more addiction, no more alcohol use, quit smoking cigarettes, nothing. Excuse me one second. everyone around me noticed a great change. By letting go of things that held me back, like guilt, I took it upon myself that my mother's death was a lot due to it was my fault, when it wasn't. I just felt like it was. The negativity, the shame, the fear, the doubt, the self-doubt, the insecurities, all these are handed over to my higher power, God. And he took them away. They were gone. From that point on, I started to find an inner peace in myself, as well as profound spiritual experiences that was going on in my life. Things were coming to me. Things were happening to me that I did not expect. It's a great experience. To this day, now in my life, I run the PWPA program, was the Prescott Progressive Workers Agency, which I take mostly homeless or people living in halfway houses, and provide them work ethics and job skills via different construction jobs or landscaping jobs and stuff that we do for CCJ. I'm also on the board of directors for CCJ. I was asked to be on the board when I was actually still staying at the shelter. I was in that shelter for 9 months. I work part-time as a behavioral health technician. I'm also on the CCJ Second Chance Housing Committee, and also on the CCJ Financial Committee. Today, my life is the best it's been ever. And it's mostly due because of my belief in God and the help of the Coalition for Compassion and Justice, my friends who had actually helped me get through difficult parts of my life. It was like being stuck in that mud, and with all these people and my higher power together, they pulled me out of this quagmire of guilt, addiction, and alcoholism, where I could once again search for that enlightenment, which is actually the 8th step of spirituality. And that's something that I'm going to have to work on the rest of my life, to be faith, to get to that enlightened point of my life. And I'm looking forward to it. And I want to thank the Center for Spiritual Living for what they did for the clients for CCJ, the homeless, for taking them for that whole week. That's very much appreciated. And I want to thank them for letting me bear this slight bit of testimony that I have about my spirituality and my journey that I've had so far. Thank you very much. And here's Kathleen.
So, these are the great people I get to hang out with as a part of, this is my job, this is what I do. Thank you, Chris, for sharing all of that.
You're welcome.
I want to just point something out. Chris came to a couple different crisis points in his story. One was his life was in danger and his brother pulled him literally up out of a ditch. And in the other one, it was a normal thing that happens to all of us. You know, at some point, the people we love who live in physical bodies are going to leave those physical bodies. And how we deal with it and our different options are all, you know, we have so many different choices. And the healing that Chris needed happened in relationship. And so I just want to remind you that there's human relationships and there's spiritual relationships, and we get to commit to the transformational healing that happens one way or another. I'll just remind you that there is no way you're going to avoid this transformation. According to our teachings and according to what most of the mystics all taught, we are all on a path of self-discovery. We are all learning who we are and digging deeper and deeper into our own hearts and minds in order to find the magnificent soul that actually lives in every single body, no matter what we look like on the outside, no matter what our stories are, no matter what we've experienced in our lifetimes. We all get to, once we commit to listening to that still small voice, to listening to the higher power and allowing that power to pour through us, we are all lifted up. Now, you can put it off as long as you want, but at some point, you're going to have to admit that thou art that you too are the son or daughter of the infinite spirit, that you too are the adult child of God with a magnificent soul, and that Spirit takes great pleasure in its creation, having made you exactly as you are. And so in this teaching, the reason we vision, the reason we pray, the reason we come together to learn from each other, and as Reverend Dr. Kathy Hearn used to say, grow up all over each other, and sometimes that can be messy. The reason we come together is in order to discover this magnificent soul that lives in each and every person. So in this moment, I invite you to just remember who you are and whose you are. Because the truth is, there is nothing you can do to stop being one with the divine. There's, if God is infinite, and all faiths teach that this is an infinite being, quantum physics and, even basic physics teaches that all things are actually joined together, that there is only one thing, one vast web of energy that we call the physical world. And so even if I just put my fingers together, at some level, the molecules are intermingling. I get to retain my wholeness and my sense of individualism, and I am also one with the greater whole. No matter what I'm doing, no matter where I've been, no matter what I've done. So if you're sitting there saying, oh, but Reverend Kathleen, I am the exception. I have terminal uniqueness. I am the one and only time that God's messed up and made a broken person. You don't understand. My mother could tell you. You don't understand. Everybody always told me. I do understand. They were wrong. They got bad data. You are an infinite being. You are a magnificent soul. And when you are ready to admit it, this is one of the ways, this teaching is one of the ways that offers different spiritual tools to help you start seeing yourself more clearly. This is what we do. This is why we do it. Because people like Chris, when he was still hobbling around on his broken foot and drunk as a skunk or whatever, was still an infinite being with the power of the divine within him. It just took a little time for him to figure that out. Now, nobody could have done it for him. He could have chosen to go out and go drink it again. He could have chosen to stay in the ditch and jerked away from his brother and drown in that ditch. That was his choice. And you get to make the same choice over and over again. I can't do it for you. The practitioners can't do it for you. We will walk this path with you, but we can't do it for you. And so in the visioning that I'm teaching on, those prayer and meditation groups that have been talked about on Monday nights and on Saturday mornings, I'm going to teach a deep form of prayer and meditation called visioning. And we're going to go deep into it. And if you really want to transform and get that deep sense of surrender, that is not about losing, but about gaining a greater experience of yourself and your life, that is where we go. Now, the other tool that we use in the Center for Spiritual Living is sharing our individual truths. Not everybody is going to have the same opinion about everything. Believe it or not, there are some people who disagree when I talk. There are some people who look at me and say, Reverend Kathleen's gone nuts again. And that's okay with me. The last thing I want is a center full of people who are just sheep and go along with everything I say. Well, okay, there are days that would not be a bad thing. But in truth, in order to really practice this, what you're surrendering to is your higher power, your understanding of God. and you bring your individualized expression of the divine to the center, whether it's physically or online, and you bring all that you are and all that you want to be and all of that secret stuff in the back of your heart that you think we won't love you because of. You bring all of that, and we commit to the transformation individually and collectively, and that is how we create what we call our vision. We commit individually and collectively to what we call the world that works for everyone. And then we allow Spirit, the God of our own understanding, to show us step by step what's ours to do. And whether that's showing up at the board meeting or showing up in a class or watching this at 3 a.m. because you can't sleep and it's better than drinking or drugging or going out and beating yourself up somehow, whatever it takes, whatever is yours to do, your heart already knows. And so I ask you to join us now. If you are interested in becoming a member, if you're interested in turning your life around, this is the time. This is the place. Church hop for as long as you need to. God knows that all of us are online now. It's become very easy. You don't even need to leave your sofa. It might be a good idea to leave your sofa at some point, but whatever you need to do in order to find your connection and your path, I invite you to join us here at the Center for Spiritual Living Prescott. We absolutely are here for God, God as you. We ask you to join us in creating this world that works for everyone. Join us in creating an online campus where everyone around the world can be served. I recently read that there are less than 400 centers around the world. Centers for Spiritual Living is relatively small. So assume that, the average is actually about 95, call it 100 because the math is easier, 100 people on a Sunday. Times 400 is 400,000? Yeah, that's it. It's either 40,000 or 400,000. I misplaced zeros. They're so hard to grab because there's nothing there. Anyway, let's be generous. Let's say there's 50,000 or 500,000 people who actually have access to this physically where they live. What about the other 8 billion people on the planet? We need you too. And so I invite you now to become part of the Center for Spiritual Living here in Prescott, whether you're in Northern Arizona or not. Come home to yourself. Come home to the highest power that is within you. Come home to the best BFF you could ever have, you, your divine self. Come home and learn how to do visioning so that you can see what your path is. The other big tool we use is prayer, and you've heard that several times, and now I'm going to go into prayer. When I say prayer, I absolutely know that the divine being is speaking me as it's hearing through you. And so as I go to prayer right now, I ask you to join me in whatever way works for you. If you want to close your eyes, great. If you need to get up and dance, awesome. You do you. But I close my eyes so that I can focus on the truth within. And I remember that God is all there is. God by whatever name you want to use. Him, her, it, us, them. God is, and God is all there is. And that infinite spirit, that infinite life, that sense of love and power and peace that permeates the universe, that makes the electrons hop between atoms, all of that is what we call God, for want of a better word. And it is as all of us right here and now. The divine being is living in this world, living in its own creation as each and every one of us. And so in this moment, each and every one of us is already committed to spiritual truth, our deepest wisdom, our deepest enlightenment, as Chris said, is already ours. We are already Christs and Buddhas. We are already that with a capital T, the great thou. And so as we come into that truth, all of the muck and all of the dis-ease and all of the misunderstandings about ourselves that we were ever handed now falls away because we stand in the light of our truth. And shadows don't argue with truth. They simply disappear and cease to be and walk their path. And so in this moment, I give thanks for the truth of who we are. I give thanks for the truth of where we are and where we deserve to be in this moment. And I bless it all and call it good. And so it is.